And you were a few years older? Or younger?
Yeah, I think I'm 2 years older than him.
Huh. Okay, yeah, so I guess I got to hear a bit about your childhood overhearing that conversation. So your family were in Belize at the time?
Well, my family, my dad was in the army. So he got a job in 1984, he got a job out in Belize, Central America. Was it 83 or 84? I was about 7 or 8. So, and that was a job that was a three-year gig. So he had to go. I had two sisters younger, so they went out with them, and then I was at boarding school from about 7 or 8.
Whereabouts?
Wellesley House, which is where I met James. Yeah, which is in the Isle of Thanet in Kent, Broadstairs.
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite a nice part of the world.
Yeah, beautiful. I've been down there to record a podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah.
Broadstairs, yeah. There's like a Charles Dickens house there.
Ramsgate.
Oh yeah, Ramsgate.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and there's Margate there. I mean, these are seaside towns that nowadays are a bit... Well, actually, Margate's on the way back big time, or has arrived, or returned. But in the 80s, they were quite tired and down on their luck, really. Everyone was going abroad to Spain for holidays. No one went to Margate anymore.
And did you grow up near there before your parents moved?
No. My father was in the army in Germany. So before that, we were in West Germany, and that was. I think I was boarding. I can't quite remember actually. It's quite difficult to remember. I think I first went to boarding school when I was. I think my mother was telling me I just turned 8. She was waiting till I was 8, and then and that's in October 1983. 1983. Yeah.
And what was that like for you?
Well, my parents were in Central America, so it was. I was very. I mean, I think everyone was, but it was quite difficult because they were sort of however many 5,000 miles away. So I wouldn't see my parents for half term, for example. I'd go and stay with uncles and aunts or family friends and stuff. So it was homesick. It was pretty awful actually. I was trying to. I went for a run this morning, and I was thinking about memory of prep school, and so prep school, for people who aren't aware, is short for preparatory schools. Basically, it's preparing you for public school. So that's from the age of 7 or 8 up till 13.
And public school means?
Public school means private school. And private school is 13 to 18.
For boys, right? Because for girls it's different.
Well, it's mixed as well. So the prep school I was at was mixed. So it was... And I think always, as far as I can remember, it always was. So, boys and girls. My sister later joined me when my parents moved back to Europe. But so I was when I was running, I was thinking of my memories of prep school, and they're all pretty negative memories. Like I only remember, it was weird. I remember either being beaten or being hit by other boys. We would all do it to each other. I'm not claiming I was bullied, but it's all sort of, everyone's really lonely. You just kind of, it's almost a sort of Lord of the Flies type situation. You just deal with it.
The older boys beating up the
Oh no! It's not beating people up. It's more sort of everyone's the same age. So everyone. I remember I was in a bedroom in the dormitory, and I think we thought we'd play a game where we hit each other in the stomach, and I was first up, and I think really badly winded me, and I remember just being doubled up in agony. Have you ever been winded? It's awful, isn't it? You can't breathe. And I just remember everyone in the dormitory was just sitting on their bed just watching me, and then the fact that I didn't sneak gave me kind of kudos. So that was okay. That was the sort of silver lining of the cloud. But all sorts of I mean, there were positive, because I wouldn't say I was particularly unhappy. It's just that I don't really remember the happy parts. It's strange.
What about before you went to school?
Well, it's going a bit further back. So what, from the age of I don't know, when's your first memory? From 4 till 7? I don't really. I mean, I remember we lived in London. We lived in London, southwest London, and I went to primary school near Victoria Station, and
Right here.
Yeah, St Peter's, Eaton Square. It's right outside the train station, and we just get the train in from Clapham Junction into Victoria. I'd go with my mum and I can't remember. My sister's 19 months older than me, younger than me, so I think she must have gone until we went to. We then went to Germany when I was about 6 or 7, but in Bielefeld, and we weren't there for long before my dad got posted to Belize.
And were you happy to move, or it was just?
Well, it wasn't like we got consulted. I suspect my mum didn't really get consulted either. So I think it was a good job, and Belize is an amazing country. I went back when I was 18 as an archaeologist, but I think it was my mum. It's very difficult for my mum. It's very unfair on her because she almost didn't have a choice. Schooling in Belize isn't well regarded, shall I say? Particularly this prison, army school. So my mum didn't have much of a choice other than to send me to a boarding school.
So she wouldn't have otherwise?
I was speaking to her recently, and I asked her, God, what was your first thought when you realised you were being posted to Belize? It's almost, it's a beautiful country in the Caribbean, like, wow, And she said, no, my first thought was, oh my God, what am I going to do with Ollie? So it's almost worse for her, I think.
Where did your parents both grow up?
My mother, Northern Ireland, County Antrim, in a rather a nice house just outside a small village called Culibaki. So this is proper prod country, Northern Ireland. My grandfather, William Young, was he was a World War I veteran. So he was quite old when he had my mother. He got really badly injured in the First World War. And his father, and it goes all the way back to the late 16th century or something, in Northern Ireland. And then they moved when my mum was about 15, 16, to Devon, because my grandmother didn't want to live in Ireland anymore. Which is, I think, quite a wrench for my grandfather. And then my dad, he was born in 1940, and his father was fighting in the Second World War, so he didn't see his father for 5 years or something.
Wow.
And then he grew up in Hampshire, between Winchester and Southampton, a place called Ashton.
So where felt like home to you growing up?
Well, we lived in London for a bit. We lived in Germany, lived in Belize. We had this my dad had this house in Hampshire, but we never really living in any of these places for more than 3 or 4 years. So if I support Southampton, I support Hampshire County Cricket Club. So it's Hampshire, because it's the kind of, the base, but I wouldn't say, we didn't spend, a huge amount of time there because of the army, just travelling around.
Where do they go after Belize?
back to Germany, a place called Rheindahlen, which is the headquarters of the British Army in Germany. It was a huge army camp. It's not a particularly interesting countryside around there, and it's army camp. It's not, it's a bit weird. But it was a lot closer than Belize, so easier for me. Yeah.
So what were the values your parents instilled in you growing up?
Oh my God.
Or what was it they wanted for you?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose they wanted a really good education, which they got. I mean, I went to really good schools and a really good university, so that, I guess, was first and foremost. It's difficult values. I mean, we didn't really talk about that kind of thing. I've always had quite a strong moral belief, but I guess comes from upbringing, much of which is spent at traditional British boarding schools, of the sort of Victorian type, even though it's in the 1980s, they're very much based on a Victorian ideal of hard work, sport, teamwork, that kind of thing. Suppression of emotion, very much so, very important.
Where did you go next after prep school?
I went to public school, Harrow.
Yeah.
At 13. But by the time I got to Harrow, I was kind of over that homesickness, because it had been almost beaten out of me. It had been flattened out of me, the kind of damage had been done, and you're kind of used to it. And I actually, it means that I'm quite good on my own. I'm quite happy on my own. I can spend time on my own and completely relaxed about that. After I left school, I went to Central America for 6 months, where I literally went with a phone number. I mean, it was quite a good phone number, I have to admit that. But
Whose phone number?
it was a very well-connected businessman in Belize.
Is that how you met Harrison Ford?
No, I met him. I met him when he was filming The Mosquito Coast. I think that was 1984 or 85. I met him when he was in the country filming. So that was amazing. Yeah, I can still remember that. I can still picture him in his bright blue Speedos.
And you went and had a chat to him?
Well, we didn't talk long. I didn't think he really wanted to speak to a 9-year-old. But he was just very friendly. Hi, Oliver. He was so friendly. So, River Phoenix was there as well. And Helen Mirren. But I wasn't interested in them. I was only interested in Harrison Ford. Yeah, it was amazing. Belize is an amazing country. I went back and spent 6 months there as an archaeologist. It was loads and loads of fun. I didn't meet many Brits, it was mainly Americans, Belizeans, locals from particularly the inland, Indian, the remnants of the Maya Indian, who we were doing a lot of archaeology with, and American archaeologists.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's straight after you finish uni?
School. When I left school, I took a year out before university. So I worked in London for 6 months to get the money to
What did you do
go
for
out.
work?
I worked in Tiffany's and Harrods. There's like wrapping presents in Tiffany's. I got fired because I was hopeless, and then I went to Harrods, and that was a lot more fun because there was a lot more people my age doing what I was doing, working in luggage and Christmas decorations, and it was loads of fun. We were, out every night and just having a hell of a time. And then, in work early the next day, you serving all these sort of famous people, and Mohammed Al Fayed walking the floor. You kind of felt the presence when he was walking the floor because his security men would just appear. You just knew he was there, and you had to make sure you were on best behaviour.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was he a nice guy? Did you ever chat to him?
I didn't chat to him. I think he walked the floor because he wanted to make sure it was up to high standard. I don't think a nice guy wasn't the reputation he had. It was more make sure you're
doing your job.
Yeah. There were rumours that he would fire people if he didn't. I don't know. If he didn't like how they looked.
Huh.
Hmm.
Okay, wait. So going back to school, and how you
Do you see the way I deflected there, and then we go on? So I'll do anything to avoid talking about my feelings.
What feelings?
No, nothing. I just I think I just I don't know.
Did you enjoy your time at Harrow?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we did. I made some good friends, and it's incredible. There's just these schools have got so much. So there's always something that you'll find an interest in, and so what I find a lot of people are very critical of them, and I understand why. I completely get it, in that it breeds this kind of arrogant public school boy. But we're all divided into houses in these schools, and there are about 80 people, roughly, in each house. At Harrow there were 800 people in the school in total. So yeah, it's roughly sort of 70 or 80 people in each house. In my year, in my house, I don't think anyone, none of my friends were sort of, their parents weren't, okay, they were wealthy because they could afford to send us to Harrow, but they weren't, my best friends aren't princes or aristocrats or Russian oligarchs. They were accountants, doctors, army officers like my dad. So I don't think any of us were massively arrogant. And I'm not a particularly confident person either. So I've had all that schooling where a lot of people would expect, hyper confident.
You come across as really confident. Like in your podcast, I'm jealous of how confident you sound. Yeah.
Oh well, that's probably a bit of an act, actually. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, you have to. Well, but that's true of anyone. You have to put up a kind of. If I went on these podcasts and went, I'm not sure I should really be doing this, I don't think the guests would last long, would they? So you have to kind of present a shield. Yeah. So
what were you mostly interested in at school?
Reading, really. I've always loved reading. That was an escape at prep school, really. Just reading. So.
Anything in particular?
Well, when you're young, you sort of start with the kind of. I've always loved history, so I love reading Greek myths, and that's where I fell in love with ancient history. So really, it's the Odyssey, the Iliad, and I love historical fiction. So I'm really into things like when I was at prep school, I was really into Sharp and stuff like that. But really, it was the Greek myths that got me, and that's why I studied that's why I ended up studying ancient history at university, because of that.
And did you have a sense of what you'd do with your life?
No, I had no idea. I went to university I picked a university where I knew I wouldn't know anyone, and I picked Well, I just wanted a fresh start. That's what I thought university should be, really. Just a completely clean slate. A lot of my
Oh.
friends went to university where they knew loads of people. I didn't want that at all. I wanted to make new friends. That was a very conscious decision of mine, actually. Well, probably one of the earliest other... that and going to Central America to work. Those were both the kind of quite a big deal for me at the time.
And why archaeology?
Well, I'd always been quite interested in it, and in the year out, I was working on Maya archaeological sites, and I think it just seemed like quite a fun, cool, glamorous job involving history. It's not that, by the way, but that's what I thought it was.
Huh. Wait, so is that Central America because you just decided to go there?
Well, because we used to live there. Now, I used to go back to Belize in holidays for 3 holidays a year, the winter, Easter and summer holidays, and it was amazing when I went back. So I just wanted to return really and see and I wanted to do something. I wanted to work. I didn't want to. A lot of people that I knew went to sort of Thailand and pissed around doing nothing. Many people didn't. They did other things, but I wanted to go somewhere that I was really interested in.
And it just ended up the work was in archaeology.
Well, I think I'd applied. I'm trying to think now. I'd applied to study ancient history and archaeology at Warwick, so I had. I was going to it was an academic pursuit, so I had that kind of qualification even though I hadn't started studying it. I couldn't just rock up on a site and just say, "Hey, I'm here for a year out. Do you want to hand me a shovel?" There was a vague amount of interest. They knew that I was serious about studying the discipline, and it was practical archaeology, so I was going straight into sites rather than learning about it beforehand. But it was very kind of the archaeological directors in the 2 sites that I worked on to have me on. But it was, but I was, I worked hard, so they were, a lot of it was menial because I wasn't much use intellectually for them. So I just got on with it.
And you enjoyed it?
Oh yeah, it was loads of fun. I mean, you're 18, you're hanging out with loads of cool university people, graduates. Most of them are graduates of UCLA in the first dig, and they're 3 or 4 years older than you, and they're American, so they're glamorous in that regard. And I was just, I had a great time. Boys and girls, we go out and Belize. It was Central America is interesting. I was listening to your really good episode with Paul Monk about El Salvador, and he was talking a little bit about death squads. There were no death squads in Belize, but there is a kind of Central America is a place where, just over the border, just a few 100 meters away was Guatemala. There, and Mexico as well. Parts of Belize are like this. They're a different, I don't know if it's different values, but I think many Westerners expect a certain level of, law and order, which just doesn't exist. And it's quite eye-opening and an important education to realise that, just because you've come from Britain or wherever, you can't expect another country to just,
Yeah, well, I remember that with crossing the border, because I went from Mexico through Belize to Guatemala, and it's on the borders you just have to hand over tons of cash, and it's why? It's do you want to go into the country or not?
Yeah, little things like that. you know, I could see danger developing. We'd often go out to nightclubs in towns where were there only white faces, and it's just a kind of, there's a level of an undercurrent of violence that was kind of already there. These were all very poor places as well. You just learn to be a bit wary and not risk things, really. And it's just the way it is, and not to sort of rail against it or anything like that. It's just the way it is. Yeah.
As in, you would be targeted as
No. But there's just a kind of, particularly this was mid 1995 as well, so it's a long time ago. So it's just a kind of, it's just a different world, really. You know, most cities in the West, you've got a police force and everyone pretty much obeys the rules. So that's like that it was in 1995 at least. I haven't been back since, so there's probably listeners in Belize right now going, this guy's talking shit. He's absolute rubbish. But that's what it was like in 1995.
I don't know if there's any listeners from
You would be surprised. I found some listeners in Iran. I was very excited about that the other day. And in Albania,
cool.
Peru. I get very excited when I look at my globe.
Yeah.
Listeners.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if anyone's listening from Belize, please.
Yeah, please get in touch with me.
Okay, so, and your parents were like supportive of your decisions?
I think a year out, you know, it's called, people call it gap year, you know, because it's sort of super posh people. Tends to be super posh people find a job in a charity in, I don't know, Botswana or something, and they will then return going, God, I did some really valuable work. But often, you know, their mum and dad paid for the flight, paid for a agency to just sort of handle them there, plonk them in a village where they'll do some work and then they'll leave. Whereas I did it all myself. I just earned the money, got the flight, and then made some contacts when I was out there. And then once I was on the first archaeological site, I then went to another one as a result of that. Well, I worked on a ranch as well, and clearing out, working in stables, clearing out all shit as well. And then through that, got a job in the other archaeological site.
So, but they were just like, yeah, go and do whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there was no mobile phone, so I wasn't calling home or anything. It was just, I think it was a kind of gap year. It was a sort of, the gap year is a kind of almost a cultural thing amongst private school children, to just go away for a year before university to try and, I know it's part of growing up, really. You come back a little bit more mature. I did, at least. I also came back, before I wanted to join the army, and when I came back I didn't want to join the army.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How about?
Well, I just didn't think it was really me. It was, I think after leaving school, I had kind of had enough of being told what to do, basically. And it was in the mid-90s, so there wasn't really, it sounds bad because it is service for your country and everything, but there wasn't much on offer. It wasn't really, Germany was reducing, there was stuff going on in Bosnia, but that wasn't particularly attractive. So it wasn't really anything. I think I wanted to go in 100% and didn't feel it.
Huh. What? So if it was like right now, you'd be more excited by it?
Well, I don't know about now because again, I think we're in a bit of a lull. But if it had been, if there was if there was more, I don't know. It's difficult to know. You know, because there's been this discussion in the newspapers at the moment about conscription and national service and stuff. And because I was thinking about this the other day, you know, if like in Ukraine, if you had an aggressor invading, and this is what there's been some discussion about, would you join up? And I mean, I would, but I mean, I'm 48 now, so they wouldn't want me. But I'm short-sighted, and but I would definitely join up. But I believe a significant percentage of young people now wouldn't be interested, and I think Ukraine certainly taught me that, you know, there are things worth fighting for. So I would definitely join up. But at the time, maybe I would be in that percentage. Yeah, so maybe I'm just being, you know, I'm not knowing my younger self. Where I think there was just less. It was post-history as well. You know, Cold War's ended. Iraq War hadn't happened. Okay, there was stuff going on in the Balkans, but I mean, it wasn't something. It's not the sort of glamour posting, is it? So I think that's really that, plus not really wanting to go through a institution that was so similar to, or a progression from a public school where, you know, very hierarchical. And
did your parents try and influence you to?
Well, I think my dad would have really liked me to go. My mum would have known I would have been. She would say that I would be good at it, but I don't think I would have been. But I think my dad was probably disappointed, but because I'm the first to have, you know, his father, he was in the army, his father was in the army, his grandfather was in the army, great-grandfather in the army. I think, yeah, I've let the side down.
Did you feel that pressure?
Yeah, but I've always liked to do my own thing. So going to Central America, going to studying archaeology, going to the university where I didn't know anyone, getting a job in that's completely different industry to my family's. You know, doing what I'm doing now. Where living in different places where my family had never lived, just didn't want to do exactly what they had done.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm my own man. So that's been quite a...
So you kind of had that attitude from school, like, I'll just figure out my own life.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a while, which is why I ended up doing some really crappy. I've done some really shit jobs.
Like after uni?
Yeah, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was an archaeologist for a year, but before I got that job and after it, I did some really, really...
Like what?
I think the worst job I ever did was I sold calculators out of a bag on the street, and I am a hopeless salesman. So I did that for four days, I think it was, and I worked out that and the amount of calculators I sold, I think I must have sold about 5 or something. I think I got paid 20. If you worked out how much, because you were paid on commission. I think I worked out if you take into account travel, I think I was on 20p an hour.
What street?
I was in South London as well. I mean, not even around the wealthier parts of London. We just had a patch. I answered an ad in the Evening Standard, because I was reading it thinking, this is me, I'll do that, and it wasn't me. And I found that out when I was so bad. So calculators and what else? Torches, I think. I can't. And you would collect your stock at the beginning of the day. I'd have to hike my way all up North London somewhere to an industrial estate, fill up your canvas bag with calculators, and then I went with an expert salesman who would show you the ropes. He would hop in his car and he'd drive to South London, and he was brilliant. He could sell iced Eskimos.
Really? He would successfully sell calculators
Yeah,
to random people on the street?
He was amazing.
Who is looking to buy a
And
calculator?
he collected these Benson and Hedges. They used to give you these loyalty cards. He had his glove compartment was overflowing with these loyalty cards you get from cigarettes. He was just a sort of he had the gift of the gab. Asian guy. He was brilliant. He was just lovely guy. But I think I shadowed him for day one. No point did it kind of twig that I would have to do what he was doing. It was like, and he could do it. He would go into a shop, I don't know, a dry cleaners, and say, "No, mate, I see your calculator's looking a bit old. I've got one here that something along these lines," and then somehow they would end up buying it.
Wow.
Yeah. And have you got any kids? These are great for school, and they would.
Interesting. And you just wanted to make some money?
Yeah, I just wanted a. Was it a holiday? No, it was. I just wanted to earn some money so I could live. But yeah, I think I decided, no, I think I need a job where you are guaranteed an hourly wage.
Was this after uni? Or this
Yeah, I think it was after uni. Yeah, I did. I was a decorator. I worked pubs. I worked in I was a hopeless waiter, and I worked as I worked for Westminster Parking as a parking administrator.
Wow, like a ticketing inspector.
Yeah, I wasn't issuing tickets before your listeners get angry with me. I was in the bureaucracy of Westminster Council in a building near Chelsea Barracks, where I would process parking tickets and put them into the system. So when you have a parking inspector, and you go, "Oh, come on, mate, let me off this," and he goes, "No, sorry, it's in the system." Well, that was me. That was in the system.
So this is
Glamour job.
This is when you were trying to work out what
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah, I was living in London. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I don't know what I was doing. I didn't. But then I met a friend of mine who was working as an archaeologist for the Museum of London, and she referred me, and I got a job that way. But then got made redundant from that after a year, and then decided, you've got to do something with your life. So I did an IT masters for a year at Nottingham Uni, and then went to work in the city.
Why did you choose IT?
Well, I mean, I have zero financial acumen. I am hopeless and just really, really bad at it. So you would be embarrassed at my lack of knowledge. It's just awful. And I worked for an investment bank for 18 years.
Wait, you mean like personal finance?
I'm actually okay on personal finance, but the whole, economics, I don't really get it. I don't understand it. And
I think that's most people, and that's kind of the problem.
I try and learn, and I'm not bad. So I'm very interested in the financial crisis of 2008, and I understand why it happened and everything. But if you were to sit me down and we'd talk about, I don't know, the stock market at the moment, I would try and listen for about 2 minutes, and I would be really trying to listen, but I just can't help it. I just drift off and get bored, and I can't engage with it.
Yeah, I'm not that interested either.
Mm.
But finance is so broad.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Yeah, because I worked in banking, and then I had no idea how to manage my own finances. So that was, literally was like buying books of like how to.
Oh really? Oh, I'm the opposite. Yeah. So my personal finances I'm okay. But.
Yeah, but that's fine. Being interested in markets, that's fine. But you run a business, so so I'm probably more similar to you, that I'm interested in like businesses, how businesses work.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. But
Well,
then
do you know
that's
what
different to markets.
Yes, it is. It is. So markets I don't understand. Investment banking, mergers and acquisitions I don't understand. Hedge funds I don't really understand. But I know how to. Well, the reason why I know how to run my own business is that I play Championship Manager, the football management game, the early version, and I'm just very tight. I don't like to spend too much money and try and look at opportunities to get money in. And that's all. And that's like being a manager of a football team when you're buying and selling players and stuff like that.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
That's my. That was my education.
Great.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. So you did. So why did you do IT? What's it got to do with finance?
Well, because it sounded more interesting. It seemed more interesting, technology, you know. And there was this course they did up at Nottingham, MSc. So it was for people who had BAs like me, who's graduated with ancient history and archaeology, and you could convert. And then I thought, I'll be employable, because I was applying for graduate jobs. I applied for some job that was going in Bracknell, with apologies to people who from Bracknell. I didn't want to live in Bracknell. I wanted to live in London or somewhere. And this job had something to do with barcodes of coffee. So it was a bit like the economics markets thing. The person was explaining what the job was, and I just it's to do with barcodes on coffee packets. Does that sound interesting to you? Not really.
I mean, depends. But
it was
what
a job
were you looking for?
I just wanted a job. I just didn't care.
Like a more sustainable job than the other ones you tried.
A job, yeah. One that didn't pay on commission. One that was a reliable. And so I would get these graduate sort of newspapers would come with these sort of advice for graduates about how to get a job, and then you would look at all the jobs at the back and apply to them through that. Oh, it's just awful, because I sent so many job applications. I applied to, I thought, I'd love to work for Guinness. So I wrote to Guinness, have you got a job? I'm a graduate. And it's just, what was I thinking?
Did they reply?
It was sort of, don't call us, we'll call you. And they never called. At the time in the mid-90s, or the late 90s this was around, because I graduated in 98, so it's around 98, 99. Everyone was saying that a really clever, funny covering letter would get you a job. So, I don't know, if you applied for a job at Twinings, you would attach a tea bag. Or no, you would apply for a job and you would attach a tea bag to your covering letter and go, I make a great cup of tea. And so the theory being, the recruiters would look at that and they would laugh uproariously, go, this is the person we want working at our firm. And so, you would add a sentence in your letter to try and attract, like, I can pour the perfect pint of Guinness. But of course I couldn't. I was hopeless at pouring Guinness. But I thought, if you put these funny little things in covering letters, it'll work like magic. And no, it doesn't work. It didn't work. Because it's ridiculous. It's just, there's so many. I applied for so many jobs and I got very few interviews. And then those interviews I did get, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I was a very unconvincing candidate. I wouldn't have hired me.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of like me.
Right. But you're very successful. You're working in a hedge fund and you've worked in a...
But when I think about how jobs come about, I think for anyone, it's like applying in those traditional routes to go to someone who's not really the decision maker, it's some gatekeeper, and they get thousands of applications. Like, why, even if you do something funny, it's still...
It wasn't even funny.
It's like this with the podcast. It's like, how do you actually get someone to come on your podcast? Just like, by like directly contacting them, and and it's like with jobs, it's like often the same thing. Anyway. So then you decided you needed more study to be a more appealing candidate.
Well, I thought, oh, technology's interesting. You know, this is the dawn of the internet. I worked in the Ministry of Agriculture. That's another job I didn't mention. I worked at the Ministry of Agriculture in the Leylandii and which is hedges and bees, and that was an extremely boring job as well. And it was working for the British Civil Service, which is quite eye-opening. But I did meet one of my oldest friends there, and through him I met my business partner, who I work with on aspects of history. And so that is the best, probably one of the best jobs I've ever had because of that. But the job itself was just ridiculous. But this was in the late 90s. You know, you go to the pub on Friday for lunch, which is not the done thing in American investment banks nowadays. Yeah, I think I just thought, oh, technology was the internet. And I quite like the idea. I applied for a job in technology support, and I quite like fixing things and helping people. So that's what I got the job for.
Cool.
Yeah.
So in that time when you're trying to figure stuff out, were you worried about it?
Yeah, I was always overdrawn and borrowing more money from the bank, and and hoping I'd get a job.
Were people putting pressure on you?
Oh yeah, but I've been used to, I've had pressure from my parents. I mean, they're the only real people that put pressure on you at that. But I'd had pressure from them since I was probably 12 or 11, so it's always been there. You know, I had quite a bad habit when I was at school to only do enough, not do any better. So I was never in any of the top forms or anything like that. I only did just enough to get by. Because I think I was quite lazy, maybe. I don't really understand it now. I work 7 days a week. You know?
But I guess you had other interests, like you enjoyed reading and things
and playing sport and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just I would just do the bare minimum. And so I always had my dad on my back to, you know, do more. Which didn't work because I don't like being told what to do, so I kind of react against that.
Huh.
Yeah. But then at university, actually, I worked quite hard. I'd go to all the lectures, and you know, I didn't lie in bed all day. I mean, I did a lot of partying, but you know, that's what university's partly for. But I went to all the lectures, did all the reading. Always handed my essays in on time, that kind of thing.
Because you were probably really interested in what you were learning.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, you're right.
So then was that first job at JP Morgan?
First proper, like, yes, this is sort of a career type job, yes.
Oh my god, and then you were there for like 20 years? 18
years.
Wow.
I moved away from tech in the end, which actually probably was a bit of a mistake, but I loved being in tech support. Everyone was, wherever I worked in it, you made great friends who I still see now. And we would go and fix people's PCs, you'd take the piss out of the bankers or get on well with some of them. And, you know, it was just fun. And, you know, you're working for a bank, so you're well paid, you're young, you're having a good time.
What was the tech setup back then?
Oh god! So Windows. I think when I arrived, I started in February 2002 at JP Morgan. It was Windows Millennium, I think, and it was within a year or so. There was a lot of excitement because we were moving to Windows XP.
I have no idea what that is.
This is like Windows 98.
But was it like were laptops a thing? No.
Yeah, but they were quite big and chunky. We had just started having flat screen screens. So before that was a massive, great screens, you know, the backs.
Yeah.
And broadband hadn't quite come in, so it was a lot of dial-up still. You'd get these mobile cards for the bankers, investment bankers who were out travelling the whole time, you know this. And they would have these cards you would stick in the laptop that would have a really slow connection.
Huh. And would people have phones?
Yes, yeah, Blackberries.
Well, Blackberries a thing back then.
They just arrived. And I remember going on a course on a BlackBerry, how it worked. It was quite interesting, actually. Yeah, very revolutionary. Have you seen the new film BlackBerry?
No.
You should watch it. It's really good.
But yeah, I read the book Think Again, Adam Grant, who talks about why it failed, why it was so successful in the beginning, but then why it failed.
Oh, really?
All to do with like how he was thinking about making assumptions and whatever.
Is Adam Grant someone?
No, he's like a behavioral scientist or a social scientist or something.
Oh, right.
Anyway, but I think he mentions the film, maybe. I don't know. But I'll watch it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, and then you left to set up. Okay, so 18 years.
18 years later. 18 years goes
by.
very not interesting to learn about. Yeah,
Okay, but you found you found your feed. It was like great. Now I've got a job. I'm making my own way in the world. And I can support myself. And I can grow in this company and change and whatever.
Yeah.
But then you decided to leave.
Well, I think around about 2014, 2012, 2014, I was thinking, well, you know, this is great and everything, but what actually happened was in I can't remember exact year, but around about then, I went to this guy, he died. He was 48 when he died. And I went to his memorial service. I knew him, not well, but I knew him and his wife. They were friends with my mother-in-law. They were lovely people. And he died of lung cancer. And I remember sitting in the memorial service in St. Martin's in Trafalgar Square. It was packed. It was tragic. Three kids, I think. 2 kids. And he'd worked non-stop since he was 18, 19. And I remember thinking, you know, if I get to 48 and then I die, would I think, you know, I'd live my life as I want to? And I realised the answer to that is no. You know, working I have no complaints about JP Morgan, but ultimately it's a ruthless American investment bank. And I didn't really want my life to be defined by that. So I decided I wanted to leave and do something else. And it just took me a long time for that to happen. I moved around within the firm to try and find another job that maybe would provide the answer, but it didn't, because it couldn't. There's no job that exists at JP Morgan that I would go back to now. There's just nothing. It's just not me. It sounds strange having worked there for 18 years, but it just isn't. It's just not. It's like I was saying about, you know, economics. It just doesn't fit with me. And I can do stuff. If I have to, I'll do something, and I'll do it as well as I can. So it's the same if I was doing the bins or something like that. It's just after a while, I'd probably think, well, is that really what I want to do? And that's what I think I decided, and then it just came to a crunch. And in 2019, I went on sabbatical, which I don't know, lots of people go on sabbatical and then they do return, but for me it was...
Is that like an unusual thing to ask for? It's not, because it's not long service leave or something, is it? It's like, I want to take unpaid time off.
Yeah, you had to have been there for, I think the way the firm did it, you had to be a permanent employee with them for 7 or 9 years or something. And so I reached that, so that wasn't a problem. I think they must have realised, they did realise that, okay, I'm not sure he wants to work here anymore, or at least the people in my department realised I didn't want to work there anymore. So they were very good because they allowed me to go away, and they did remove the job I was doing. It got spread around to other people, so it didn't exist. So when I returned, my job didn't exist.
And what were you doing?
I went. My wife and I, we hopped in our Mini and we drove around Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Greece, Switzerland, just
for 6 months.
Yeah, 4 months. 4 months.
Amazing. But I mean, what were you doing when you came back?
Well, when I came back,
no job.
Yeah, well, I was kind of fine with that because I knew, that my job had been kind of removed. So when I returned, I was my boss gave me a few things to do, and this was sort of late 2019, and so I would do them, and this is where I would pretend to be really busy the whole time.
What part of the business were you in?
Controls. Terribly exciting. It is similar to compliance, except compliance is meant to be, in an investment bank, certainly a large one, compliance is meant to be a sort of almost a separate entity from the business itself, in order to have the clear, divide and be a little bit more impartial. Whether that's the case in reality is a different matter, but the department I was in was the job was quite similar to that, but we worked with the business to help them navigate the regulatory and internal policies, the regulatory requirements of the US and UK, but also the internal policies of the firm. And we would basically help traders, bankers to do that. It's actually sounded quite interesting when I applied for the job, but ultimately I didn't find it very interesting. And so that's what it was. And then when I returned, I was given some sort of projects and stuff like that, and I kept on, I got it down to a T to convince people how busy I was. And in fact I wasn't. And then, so that was only a few months. I returned in like September, October, and then COVID hit 5 months later.
So you didn't even have to pretend.
Everyone was off home, and but this is true. Any big company, I was doing a job that didn't need to be done, but as is proved, because it got separated out amongst other people when I went away. And that's quite, if you think about that, you're working in a role that doesn't need to exist. So what is your function in life? Because work's quite important to me, If you're doing a job that doesn't need to exist, it's pointless. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, but that can happen in a group of people. That can happen with like the fourth employee. If the other three running the business aren't paying enough attention, you can just dead weight is picked up so quickly.
It's a lot less likely to happen in a company of 4 people.
But think about on a group project at uni. There's literally always one. No, but I mean it just.
I think these big firms, all hire. I mean, I knew loads of people because we would all talk about it amongst each other, going, "I'm doing a job that doesn't really need to exist. I'm being very well paid for it." In many ways, they do it to prove to the regulator that they are doing what needs to be done. But in many cases, there are other roles that don't need to exist,
It can also happen a control reason, like the senior person's so anal about stuff and they want resources. but they don't understand.
So the empire building.
It's like, I've done the job, it took me half an hour. Like in their mind, it's like, they're not great at delegating or they don't.
And also these huge companies are so inefficient. It takes forever to get anything done. Whereas now, I can get a page on the website set up within a few days, if that. I just have to persuade my web designer to do it. But that would take months in a bank.
Yeah.
Which is inevitable because it's one, it's an unfair comparison, but it's just an additional frustration if you're working in these places.
So on that time away, were you thinking like, I've got to leave?
Yeah, I was saying, I was talking to Marjan, my wife, and I was saying to her, why didn't I just quit? I send them an email now and say, look, I'm not interested. But then I thought, I've been there for 17 years. I'm due if my job doesn't exist, why don't I go back and see how long it lasts, and they'll probably make me redundant. And that would probably be a better way, that would be a way of doing it. So I did it that way. It is it's like these banks are very generous because it's a great way to attract people, and redundancy packages are, accordingly quite generous too. So.
And so, did you have an idea of what you were going to do next?
Quite soon. So I hadn't left, but quite soon after I was talking to this great friend of mine who was in publishing, and he had this idea, and we were talking it through for much of 2020. And then I was already, yes, I had this, Richard and I were talking about this throughout much of 2020, and so settled on it.
And did you think it would be starting your own thing, or you thought?
Yeah.
Is that the thought I interrupted about the job, like jobs being meaningless?
Yes. Yeah, so I wanted to do something. So I applied sort of rather unseriously at certain jobs that I shouldn't have applied for, like, I don't know, working in a charity or something. And the greatest respect to anyone who works in a charity, but I'm beginning, the more and more I read about certain charities, the more and more I think it's all a bit of a con. But anyway.
At least you're going to find a lot of inefficiency there.
Yeah. At the very, yes. There's a much more diplomatic way of saying it. I think I wanted to do something I really enjoyed, loved.
And so were you interested?
And I always loved history. Always. I studied ancient history. I love reading. I love books. I mean, even now, I get loads of books delivered. I still get excited when a book arrives. I mean, it drives my wife mad with the amount of books that pile up. But I can't throw them away. I love them. I love books. Yeah. I can't get around Kindle. I mean, it's quite convenient, but I prefer.
Yeah,
book.
I love books as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was just kind of perfect timing that he came to you with this idea.
Yeah.
So the idea, is that the idea that the big publishers...
Yeah, to help promote historians and authors, because we do fiction and non-fiction, so the idea is that with publishers, like any other industry, they have to find efficiencies, and I think they maybe don't have the resources that they used to for publicity, and that's where we can help through our magazine, through our website, and through the podcast to promote books. So yes, that is that's the idea.
And he just noticed that gap.
Yeah, he's been in publishing for years, 20 years.
Specifically working with history or not?
Yeah, predominantly, yes. He started out as a bookseller in Waterstones, and then he then he worked as a publicist, freelance publicist. So authors would hire him and he would get publicity for them all over the country. He had lots of great contacts.
Huh. And so before social media and podcasts and stuff, would that be mainly like getting into newspapers, doing like working with the bookshops to do
festivals, things? Yes, events, history festivals, literary festivals, or newspapers and radio and TV, that kind of stuff.
Huh. And authors would that come with the publisher? That they would organise like a publicist?
Yeah, publishers have publicists, but if you want a bit more of a bespoke approach, you can hire a publicist, and then they will do it for you.
Huh.
And then what we offer is we've got subscribers, we've got listeners, we've got readers to the website, and we do sort of we do clever stuff like we make sure the magazine's available on Kindle and put it on promotion, and once you do that on Amazon, it goes out to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And we make sure that the magazine, it's an online, if you have it direct through the website, it's super cheap, so that gets more more subscribers that way. It's just
what do you mean? If you buy the book through the website?
No, the magazine that we produce, we make it an annual subscription is only $9.99. There's 6 issues. So
pounds and US dollars.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Good deal if you're in the US.
Yes, it is. It's a very good deal if you're in the US. If I were in the US right now listening to this, I would be straight on aspects of history. And it's just ways to try and up our numbers. Really, we're on Substack.
And then do you have a paid subscription thing on Substack?
Yeah.
And you put the same content on there?
Not that's freely available on the website. So if you're paying the Substack, I think it's a £10 a month, you get 8 to 10 articles per month on a particular subject. Right now, we've just finished doing the Stuarts. And so you would get 10 articles and these are all written by historians or fiction authors who are published by major publishers. So there's the cream of historical writing, and those aren't available anywhere else. So not on our website. We wouldn't offer it for nothing on the website and then make people pay for it on Substack.
Of course.
Not even we would do that.
So did you have the business model figured out when you joined, or it was just like, we'll just figure it out?
I'd love to be able to say, it was all mapped out, but no, a lot of it's kind of making it up as we go along.
Yeah.
Like Substack, we didn't know anything about that before we started, and now, it's another income stream.
But that's what I mean about how it used to work with authors, because it's just evolving so quickly because of social media that I imagine like this old model of like the publisher's the gatekeeper, because now people can like self-publish or get book deals. As we're saying, like there's so many books that have sold like millions of copies. Like Atomic Habits is a famous one that's sold that's in the front of every like Doug Smith, whatever. Sold like 10 million copies, and it was a blog that's been turned into a book, and because the readership on the blog was already millions, it's like, and then it's like but he then went on so many podcasts to promote it. I think he did like a whole year of just going on podcasts, and so by the time it comes out, it's already, and it's like, that's so different to that old using a publicist, paying all these fees to like all these other people who are in control. And the author's kind of sitting there like, okay, I hope they sell books for me, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I was listening to a interesting chat between a self-published author and a published author the other day, I think that there's no doubt you can sell a lot of books if you're self-publishing, but I think you have to be aware of, you have to make sure that what you're producing has been edited, and it's a slick product, it's proofread, because little things like that, little typos it just gives it you don't want the author, you don't want the reader to know, oh, this is a self-published book. And so, but as long as you can do that, yes, there are many very very popular and successful self-published authors. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, no, so that one's not self-published, it's just that the publishers are like, that's where the money is. But like, they don't have to do the work, because it's like, that person already has the audience.
Well, that's the thing. Like, authors really, unless you're super big, you generally have to do the hard slog yourself. And that's where companies like us can help. And we don't charge fees that a media like a PR company would charge. Where, I mean, we looked at getting some PR for the company, and it was paying them a lot of money for really not very tangible results. They gave us a sort of 2-page of A4 of very vague, vague suggestions of what they would do. It's like, what, you want all our money for? Oh, I'm going to send some emails to the bookseller or something like that. I mean, just it seemed madness to me.
Yeah.
Whereas, and charging a lot for it. Whereas what we're offering for modest amounts. This is a product that is bespoke for the readership. It's history or historical fiction, and we know how to market it.
And I guess probably as you've worked out through the podcast, having like big name people on it, like, wait, so that's what, so the big
really
names
helps.
to me are like Douglas Murray, Konstantin Kissin, Tom Holland, Andrew Roberts.
Yes.
And like, oh, Diana's brother? Was he?
Charles Spencer.
I heard him speak at Cambridge, at the Cambridge Union. And it was like, no one's allowed to ask questions about his sister. He's only here to talk about Edward the whatever. But who were the other big names?
Simon Sebag Montefiore as well. We started, when we first started, we just wanted to get some big names, and we offer something called author platforms for authors. So we just wanted to get some big names on the author platforms, because then that really helps persuade other authors that we're not some kind of clown car operation, or worse, some kind of Ponzi scheme, which we're not. But then if we were a Ponzi scheme, of course we would say we were not.
How would a Ponzi scheme even work?
Well, I don't know. This just shows how little I know about these things.
Okay.
But just to sort of, it helps with legitimacy, and it's like everything there. It's just hard work all the time, but I don't mind that.
But yeah, I think you probably worked out, like, if you can send an email and tell someone you're interested in their work and get a big name or someone with a big audience, then when you look at these traditional PR companies or whatever charging all this money, and it's kind of like, well, some of this stuff, it's like we can figure out ourselves. Yeah.
I mean, I think we have a lot of positive feedback. So, because doing a good job is very, is almost, is the most important thing, really. So, it's quite a small world, the history author world, and so, if we weren't doing a good job, word would get around pretty quickly. And everyone who's with us is very happy with us, so we just have to keep on doing that, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
And the readers are happy?
I think so. We skip, everything's sort of in the right trajectory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, you just want everything quicker, don't you? Like anything.
So what do you want quicker specifically? Like
just more sales, more authors, and more success, because ultimately it means the business is more successful and then we can do better.
And what's your...
I don't have a goal in sight, if that's what you mean.
But I guess when you joined, like what were the main motivating factors? Like what did you really want to get out of this?
When I first started, just to do something I loved.
And is that this?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So now every day you're like...
I work on I'm working 7 days a week, but it doesn't really feel like it because it's, it's mine, so...
So you're so glad you left?
Yeah. I mean, my bank balance is not quite what it was, but I don't really mind about that. I mean, I should say that I got out at the kind of right age, mid-40s. The moment I arrived at JP Morgan, I started paying into the pension as much as I could. And, I bought a house, so, I'm on the property ladder, which I know for a lot of young people, that's a real struggle. And so I'm at that age where I can take that risk. Whereas, it's not realistic for someone, particularly if they've just joined a big firm or something, and you can't give all that up for a dream of doing something you love, that the income will be a lot less. But I was earning a good wage, but it wasn't really, I wasn't happy inside.
And your wife was supportive?
Yeah, very. Couldn't have done it without her. Yeah. And she's very successful in what she does. She runs her own business as well. So we both work at home.
How's that?
It's fine. We just had a big row actually, because I have quite a social, because I often get asked to things. I try and actually not go to as much as I could go to. So that's sometimes a bit annoying for her if I'm gallivanting off for, I've got this podcast launch tomorrow. So if I'm gallivanting off out and she's got to be up early and she's working, she does a very demanding job where a lot of the onus is on her, so there's a lot of pressure on her, and I'm, off out, returning home late. That can be quite annoying. So, but, we manage.
Yeah. I guess the pandemic changed how everyone works anyway, right? So it's not like...
Yeah. I mean, it's changed, working from home is... I guess big companies are wanting to get their staff back to the office, and you worry about the impact it has on sandwich shops and things like that.
Yeah,
but
the tube. I've kind of got that opposite problem because I now really want to join a startup because of what we're talking about, the massive inefficiencies. It's like joining somewhere really lean where you're like...
Where you matter.
Yeah, and it's like the work matter. You're getting stuff done that's so exciting and growing. Yeah. But a lot of them are fully remote, and I love being in the office all the time. So,
yeah, I like being in the office actually. I did too. I actually would probably really like being in the office. I'd probably prefer now because when everyone's working from home, I like being in the office when no one else is in the office in a way. Not no one else, but when it's a bit quieter. Because you can take the piss a bit more, as in have fun and have a normal, you can have a chat with someone that you're getting on with without worrying who's overhearing.
Cool. Wait, okay, so the new podcast is part of Aspects of History?
It is. It's run by a member of our board, Antonia, and she's a journalist for the Times. She does the historical fiction reviews in the Times, and she's writing a book on the Cambridge spy ring, which should interest you as a Cambridge.
And one of them has my surname, Burgess.
That's right. There's no relation then.
No, I don't think so.
Right. Well, she's writing a book on that and has launched this podcast. So she's going to be interviewing authors about spies.
Cool.
Yeah. So we're starting that. Comes out on the 1st of Feb. So and so it's quite interesting because we can do that now. We've got this sort of network of podcasts now because I've just signed on to this new. This will be very boring for your listeners probably, but yeah, going onto this new network where you can. So that's another thing we're doing, producing podcasts.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. It's just another way of another string to the bow, as it were.
Yeah. So for you, it's like you found what you really love doing, and now it's like, let's grow this and make it successful. And
yeah.
Is there anything, like, what's the most exciting thing for you about the job?
Probably. So it doesn't happen that often, but finding if there's a book that's coming out by an author that I've always wanted to, because I've always enjoyed their work, I've always wanted to interview or talk to. And so I had that recently because I love ancient history. So there's been some ancient historians who've been on, and I've been like you can't be a fanboy. It's embarrassing for a listener, I think, because I always worry that it's not interesting to the person who's listening. But yeah, when a historian comes on that I've always admired, it's very exciting to talk to them about a subject that I absolutely love. For example, I don't know, Alexander the Great or something.
Yeah, I think the audience loves that. That's your suppression of feelings thing. People actually love feelings. Like, it's like, he's so excited to talk to this author that it makes me excited, even though I don't know who you're talking about. It's just like, cool.
Yeah. I interviewed this historian who I was super excited about interviewing him, and he had the most boring voice, and he didn't show any kind of excitement or interest throughout the interview. Kept on trying to, come on, it's like flogging a dead horse. But
maybe he was excited just on the inside.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's just the way he was. It really was the way it was, because I've listened to him and other stuff, and he just has a very monotone voice. But the subject was so exciting for me.
So are there other dream authors who you've yet to have on?
I'm trying to think. No, nothing that springs to mind right now, but it's often more subjects now as well. So. It's funny enough, I interviewed. So I'm fascinated by Napoleon. So I got a bit carried away with the whole Napoleon thing when the film came out.
Disapproving of the film.
Well, I think I did about 2 or 3 episodes where we talked about the film. But I've got an episode written about Napoleon coming out soon, where the author is. He's very young, he's only 26, and he's written a book about Napoleon. He's French, brought up in America. He's the son of a former French president, so he has the kind of...
Which one?
Sarkozy. But I didn't ask him about his dad. I mean, it's like if someone asked me about my dad.
As I have.
Yeah. But I didn't want to ask him about his dad. I wanted to ask him about Napoleon as a Frenchman, and so that's fun. I like talking about that kind of thing. Things like the war in Ukraine, I think, is really a big deal. So if there's a book out, I'm very interested in speaking to the author, and also anything to do with Alexander the Great.
Cool.
Alexander the Great gets. I was talking to a historian who was saying, yes, well, many universities, they're very disapproving of him.
Why?
Because he was well, you know, in today's day and age, he's viewed as you know, he's a conqueror. He went across much of the known world as it was then, fighting. But he was very good at it, so that's what I find quite interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, and he was curious, though. It's that two blend. Mm. And it's also, the thing about Alexander is that it's so separate from us. It's a pre-Christian age, so I'm interested in what was normal for them would seem so strange for us. And it's like
what kind of thing?
Wow, it's difficult to say. I don't know. That's why studying it's so interesting. But I don't know. They come from a They obviously they have a moral code that in many ways we'd recognise murder wrong. You know, although he did murder quite a lot of his relatives. But yeah, I guess that gets to the heart of it in many ways. When his father was assassinated, and so Alexander was not the only child of his father. He had siblings. He had his mother, and most likely him, had his baby half-sister murdered. I think it was a baby boy actually. It was a baby. I think, 6 months, a year old or something. But that was normality for him because his family were doing that for many generations to remove a rival to the throne. It's just normal. So how do you judge him? It's interesting.
Well, I guess.
Or should you? You shouldn't really.
Well, that's why I like your approach that comes up, that you have this, it's actually like a Buddhist idea. I'm sure it comes up in a lot of places.
Oh really? It's
non-judgment. It's not, you don't have to label stuff as good or bad. There are no labels. It's just what it is.
That's completely my approach to figures from history, which is why I don't understand people who get so upset about people that they have. I can understand it if you feel like you've been affected by an individual. So if, for example, you are from a agrarian family in Bengal, you might blame Winston Churchill for the famine, even though historical consensus is that he is not responsible. But you might feel that way, and you can understand those feelings because, you know, your great-grandparents died of starvation. And you can understand why you would be upset. But if you're some academic in a university where you've got quite a good life, I can't understand it in that case.
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually to do with other things.
Yeah, other motivations and influences. Yeah. I think people aren't really as honest as they could be about that.
Yeah. Or people are influenced as well by what we pick up what's going on, and we want to have the right views to fit in with the tribe, so then we just adopt things that we hear, like, oh, this group of people's bad, but there's not necessarily critical thinking of why do I think like that, and does it matter, and do I need to label or judge something that I actually don't know anything about, really? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you and I met at that event on anti-Semitism, and that's a perfect example of it. It's people who, just because it is they perceive this conflict of fitting in their worldview of good and bad and oppressor and oppressed, and that's how it should therefore. It's almost like sort of just finding building blocks to fit in with what you already believe, and that life's a lot more complicated than that. You I don't think you can look at history like that. And I think you should be a little bit more dispassionate about it. And I was talking to one historian who was saying, I get very emotional about it because I think it's very important to be emotional about it. And I said to him, no, I really don't agree. I think you shouldn't be emotional about it. It's almost like having a surgeon going, I'm really emotionally invested in saving you. I'd rather you were not. I'd rather you be dispassionate. And I think if you're a historian, you can be emotional about it, but you shouldn't let it spill into your pages, because you should let the reader make their own mind up.
Yeah. No, I'm just laughing because the emotion, it's usually to do with something else. It's usually to do with, like, I feel like my dad never, paid me enough attention or something, and therefore I have this feeling like I have to prove something, and therefore I'm like taking up this cause, or
Yeah.
Because it's like, why? I don't know. I mean, it obviously depends on whatever it is, but it's like I hate my dad, and a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in Australia, I feel like it's like I hate my parents and they're racist, and so therefore I won't go and march in the street because screw them. But it's actually like, if you figured out that relationship, not that you wouldn't care so much, but it wouldn't be so like angry and like.
Yeah, but then I also wonder, everyone when they're young, 18 to 22, you're a lot more passionate. You're going to be a lot more feel like you're a lot more invested in what's going on in the world. Like I was. I mean, I probably wasn't at certain people's level, but I understand. That's part of being young, and that's a good, healthy thing. It's likely that they'll grow out of it. Most of them. It's pathetic when you see sort of 40-something academics getting really, behaving like 18 to 22-year-olds. But I think, I wonder, are we too damning of young people for going through that when it's probably always happened? It's just with social media, it's a lot more present and real. You see it on your phone, and so you think, oh my God, that's awful what that person has put on a placard. And it is what they put on. It is awful. But perhaps in 10 years' time, that person holding a placard will look back and go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. One would hope that's the case.
Yeah, I think for sure we should be allowed to experiment, and uni students are always more radical, and we need radical ideas to have change, right?
Yeah.
It's just, as long as we can respect each other and it doesn't become violent, and you're not like never speaking to certain people because like they voted for someone who you don't.
Yeah, I don't get that. I really don't understand that. I mean, even it's so healthy to have debate, isn't it? It's you can't suppress it really. It's very unhealthy to do that.
And people should be allowed to change their minds, of course. We can't all. It's like the problem with politicians, that we hold them that they have to have consistent views like for their whole life, but it's like that's what Adam Grant talks about actually.
Right.
That it's like it's good to be changing your mind because it means you're learning a new information and then you're evolving, and it's like a scientific approach. So it's like these are my assumptions. Are they right or wrong?
Yeah, if the facts change, then I'll change my mind.
Okay. Should I ask you the last 3 questions?
Okay.
How do you stay grounded?
I don't know. I try. I think. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the answer. Staying grounded. I suppose you mean. Do you mean like some kind of inner well-being, or do you mean how do I not get sort of? Because I'm quite a grounded person anyway. I mean, if anything, how do I have little things like I go running, so that's very good for me. That keeps the endorphins or whatever. So that's very keeping my mind fresh. But I don't engage in any kind of I don't read self-help books or anything like that. No, I'm not interested in that.
Got it. What? Oh yeah. Is there? Well, there's obviously lots of books, but is there a book that stands out as having had a big impact on your life?
Yes, I would say it is probably an impressionable age. I guess there's probably a book that I have for each kind of decade of my life, probably. But I would say Of Human Bondage by Somerset Maugham was probably, I took it away with me to Belize, and it's an amazing story of it's semi-autobiographical. Somerset Maugham's a really interesting character, actually. He worked as a spy in the First World War for the British. He was he's a brilliant writer, great short story writer. So if there are any listeners who find long novels quite intimidating, he writes brilliant short stories set in both Britain but also in sort of South China area, South China Sea, all around there. And he wrote this book called Of Human Bondage, which is about a young man who leaves a British public school and then he goes to Paris. He falls in love and with someone who doesn't love him, and it's just a sort of a rite of passage type novel, and it's very powerful to read if you're 18 to 22. If I were to read it now, it'd be different. If I were to read it again, it'd be very different. But often it's like catching a wave, isn't it? There's a book that you read at a certain time of your life that really means something, and for me it would be novels, not non-fiction.
Interesting, yeah.
Because you can empathise. You're in someone else's skin, aren't you?
Huh.
In a novel. Whereas in non-fiction, it's a little bit more. You can connect emotionally, whereas you can't. It's not that you can't. It's just different in non-fiction.
Interesting. Yeah, vast majority of people say a non-fiction book.
Really?
But it's interesting when people say a novel. Because it will invariably be a different novel that I've never heard of. But whereas the non-fiction ones are more...
Is there one book that keeps on coming up in the non-fiction world?
Eckhart Tolle comes up a lot, which is probably in the genre.
What's that?
Which is it's like a classic spiritual kind of book. A New Earth or Power of Now, but it's... Yeah,
none of this is...
But it's cool because he's actually explaining how all religions are pretty much saying the same thing. And it's what is... And he explains that about the labels good or bad, which you, I guess, just intuitively came to that. But I guess, because I guess a lot of people come on this podcast who, like me, went through, depression or something, and then they... you have to try a lot of things like medication or whatever, and then you find Eckhart Tolle and have a spiritual awakening, and that's what gets you through. So that a lot of people say something like that. But it's a blessing if you can just find those things within yourself and you can skip that whole bit.
I feel like a bit of a fraud.
No, because if you're already a well-grounded person, it's you don't need to see this stuff because it's obvious to you. You're yeah, duh. You just go running, it makes you feel good. You don't have to read a book. Whereas some of us are so stuck in our heads all the time.
Right.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I often think we're very lucky to be where we are, living in this time. If you or I were born in this country in the I can't quite remember what year it was. Is it 1380s? The Black Death. So when I think a quarter of the population died, everyone would be walking around traumatized. Imagine, you have two children, one of them's dead. And the other one's debilitated and suffering from malnutrition. So often, it's a kind of rather a blunt instrument and a blunt thing to say, but I often do think, things can be a lot worse.
Well, okay, sorry, this was the last tangent I'll go on, but that apparently is part of why we struggle so much with like mortality and nihilism and the point of life and these things of like being obsessed with like living forever and aging and stuff, because death isn't around us. We like put people away in nursing homes and like try to, whereas people used to just see death everywhere and living in intergenerational homes and whatever. And then, but now we're a bit confused about the whole idea that like, yeah, eventually we die. That's what happens in life, because we're just not confronted with it. Anyway, not saying you would rather live in that time, but that's just a thought I have. But yeah, that's also what these books will tell you. Practice gratitude, but you just doing it naturally. So that's great. Okay, last question. What 3 words describe the best version of you?
The best version of me? There is no best version of me, I'm just me. So it would be 3 words.
Yeah. Well, you might also be grumpy sometimes, but you don't want to use that as one of your words.
Okay. No, because that's not the best. Yes, you're right. So, I don't know. Curious and curious, and I'm trying to think of the word for not serious in one word, so I don't have to. So I've got a third word to use. I don't want to say humorous because that sounds like I'm a comedian, which I'm not. So, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, like fun.
Yeah, I
like
suppose so.
Or something.
Yeah, it's just that. Yeah, I just don't take There are obviously things. The Holocaust, that's something you should. That's something I would take seriously, but generally speaking, I don't take life too seriously. So whatever the word for that is, God, I'm sounding very inarticulate.
Okay, that's fine.
And then the third word, I'm so unused to talking about myself, you see, that finding a word it feels like too boastful. So, I don't know.
You can always change it another time if you come on again.
You won't want me on again after this. I don't know, modest, humble? No.
Okay,
that's all right. No, I don't know. Friendly.
Perfect. Okay, anything else? Where can people find the podcast? Or
Aspects of History. Can find it anywhere. And whatever, you can email me at history@aspectsofhistory, or you can get me on the Twitter or the X or whatever we're meant to call it. X, yes?
I'm going to still call it Twitter.
And I think X is a much better name.
No, I don't like it.
Really? Twitter's just, I try and do a bit of current affairs. So, as I mentioned, got Ukraine war, go back to the ancient world, relatively recent past. And when the subject demands it, I'm very serious. But normally it's quite like, I'm not taking it too seriously.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Delia. I feel like if there's any listeners still awake, well done.